in this Senate chamber to recall the origin of the parliamentary institution we now enjoy and to describe how this Senate traces its origin and its history in the pragmatic arrangements which follow the settlement of Barbados by Englishmen in 1627. This island was given to the Earl of Carlisle through letters patent issued by King Charles I. According to the custom of English society of that day, Lord Carlisle nominally held Barbados as a tenant of the king by the allegiance he owed to his sovereign. The letters patent did not grant all of the authority which was enjoyed at that time by a Bishop of Durham or any other territorial magnate in England. They clearly specified that the inhabitants of Barbados should enjoy all the liberties and privileges of Englishmen, and that any law made by Carlisle in and for Barbados must be as convenient and agreeable as may be to the laws, statutes, customs, and rights of the Kingdom of England. In theory, this might suggest that the king could nullify laws made in Barbados, but the stubbornness of the settlers equally suggests that practice differed from theory. There has always been some doubt, ma'am, as to whether Barbados was ever a colony in the commonly accepted sense. Two of your majesties, Prime Minister of Barbados, held the opinion that it was not. The late Right Honorable Errol Walton Barrow contended that the uniqueness of Barbados lay in the fact that it was neither conquered nor ceded by treaty, but settled. He believed that this island was a colony only in the Greek sense, that is, an independent territory settled by migrants, and not a colony in the Roman sense, which was a garrison settlement or trading outpost in a conquered territory. The late Right Honorable John Michael Adams held a similar, though differently expressed view, that Barbados is committed to Britain only through the Crown, because Barbados started as a separate realm and is an older realm than what is usually described as the United Kingdom, which came into existence much later. Carlisle's letters patent did not identify what institutions of government should be set up. Most likely it was taken for granted that the precedent of Virginia colony would be looked at and that the Lord Proprietor would rule Barbados through a governor and a council. It is possible that the first governor, Wolverstone, may have discussed policy with a few of the settlers to hear their views. He seemed to have shared his administrative duties with some of them, and we might regard these as a sort of informal council. The next governor, Tufton, did not seem to care very much for the wealthier settlers and resisted having a council, although this resistance seemed to have been overcome. Governor Hawley had a council, but we cannot tell whether he was influenced by it. It seemed that the governor, or in council, enjoyed both executive and legislative authority. There's hardly any evidence of laws being enacted between 1644, when the House of Assembly was 2 years old, but by this time the legislature appeared to be bicameral. Research has not yet disclosed whether council and house sat separately or jointly. The House certainly elected its first Speaker in 1652 and has sat separately ever since, except when invited, as in the case today, to a joint sitting. We have, in the events of 1651, the clearest evidence of how the two houses pursued a common design. In 1650, Lord Willoughby arrived in this island apparently with a commission from King Charles II, appointed him the royal governor. He, together with the House and Council, devised and issued the famous declaration against the British Parliament, which included the famous question, shall we be bound to the government and lordship of a parliament in which we have no representatives or person chosen by us, as also to oppose and dispute all what should tend to our disadvantage and harm. The legislature then answered its own question thus: in truth, this would be a slavery far exceeding all the English nations hath yet suffered. At this time, of course, they were starting another sort of slavery. In 1652, this protest was formalized in the agreement signed between Barbados and the Commonwealth of the Mermaid Tavern. Under this charter, there was to be freedom of conscience, and it was stipulated that no taxes, customs, imposts, loans, and excise should be levied on the inhabitants of Barbados without their consent in a General Assembly. It appears from the Restoration onward, the Governor's Council as a legislative entity continued to develop. His senior member became its chairman and acted as Governor's deputy when necessary. It seemed that Christopher Coutcherton may have acted as governor occasionally. Some evidence exists which suggests that towards the close of the 18th century, the title of president became the usual designation of the council's most experienced member. An interesting development took place in the early years of the last century. The minutes of the Council of the 14th of August, 1810, disclosed that the governor proposed that in future, the Council in its legislative capacity and the Privy Council should be distinct from each other, to which the board agreed and the governor withdrew. Until 1876, the same persons were members of the council in both its legislative and executive capacities. But the commission issued by Queen Victoria to Governor Pope Hennessy in 1876 announced, among other things, we do therefore declare that there shall be henceforth be within our said island of Barbados two distinct and separate councils, to be respectively called the Legislative Council and the Executive Council of our islands. The British analogy to this development was the division of the King's Great Council into the House of Lords and the Privy Council, respectively. The Legislative Council ceased existence as a second chamber in 1964, when the royal instructions were withdrawn. A Senate has taken its place and shares with Your Majesty and the House of Assembly the high privilege of making laws for of the peace, order, and well-being of the people of Barbados.
Senate President Sir Frank Walcott concluding his address. Next, the Speaker, Mr. Lawson Weeks, will stand and read an address from the House of Assembly to the Queen, and
Most
will also
gracious
present it to
Sovereign,
Her Majesty.
whereas a parliament was first assembled in Barbados in 1639, and whereas we, the members of the Honorable House of Assembly of Barbados, in Parliament assembled, cognizant that as early as the 18th day of February, 1651, the inhabitants of this nation declared through their governor, lords of the council, and members of the assembly, their independence of the Commonwealth of England, the rights and the privilege of the said inhabitants being confirmed by the Charter of Barbados, which was made on the 11th day of February, 1652, at Oistins in Barbados. And whereas the maintenance of parliamentary government during the 350 years which have passed since the establishment of Parliament in Barbados constitutes an achievement unequal for continuity in the Commonwealth of Nations. And whereas progressively, through a limited franchise and later adult suffrage, and the consequential democratization of our institutions, our nation has achieved and developed our independent existence. And whereas our society sustained through strength and unity, through our inheritance and acceptance of concepts and traditions of democracy, and through a commitment to justice for all, faces the future resolutely with an abiding faith under God. We welcome Your Majesty on this occasion once more, and we present to Your Majesty our humble duty. We beg leave to express our great pleasure in celebrating the life of our Parliament in this its 350th year. Your Majesty has before now shared with us in this our land moments and achievements treasured by Your Majesty as by us. We, the members of the Honorable House of Assembly of Barbados, in Parliament assembled, thank Your Majesty for the honor of your presence this day on the occasion of the celebration of this most historic event in the life of our nation.
Now the Honourable Lawson Weeks, the Speaker of the House of Assembly, presents Her Majesty with a copy of his welcome speech. Lawson Weeks, the 74th Speaker of the House of Assembly. He will now address the those assembled.
Have had the privilege and pleasure of sharing with Your Majesty occasions of high distinction in your reign. We recall in particular the honor of Your Majesty's presence in this chamber in 1977, the year of your Silver Jubilee. Your Majesty generously informed the world on the occasion of your speech in opening the 1988-89 session of the Parliament of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland that you would share with us by your most gracious manifestation your presence in Barbados, the celebration this year of the 350th anniversary of our Parliament. We are proud, too, to share with the President and other honorable senators the events of this morning, and to have with them the advantage and opportunity of an address to Your Majesty in this historic chamber. We congratulate the Senate on the distinction and grandeur of their chamber manifested in, may I be permitted to say, a sensitively executed restoration of great quality. We are happy that Your Majesty will, after these proceedings, fulfill one of our fondest hopes for today, by a visit which you have graciously offered to make to our chamber, and unique testimony to the constitutional firmament on which your inheritance so securely rests.